Hey, my name is Henry Harrison and I am a consulting astrologer. Thank you for coming back to my channel. This video will be a little bit different as I'm taking a creative direction that I think I was uncomfortable with taking before, but we're going to look at the new moon, the very interesting new moon for the next 2 weeks, and kind of what seeds are being planted or the way the stage is being set for changes in your life. Make sure to go to my Patreon and subscribe if you would like to see more updates about the transiting and mundane astrology of the weeks to come. I'll see you over there. So, thanks for coming back. If you've been watching my videos for a while, this is going to be a little bit different creatively. I want to use YouTube to really do what YouTube can do, right? And I want to leave my, let's say, my passion for the technicalities of traditional astrology to my Patreon, where those interested in that side of astrology can support. So, what is this new moon about? Well, if you have been in the astrology community at all, I'm sure you know that on Monday we have this Venus trine to Jupiter retrograde in Aquarius. We have the Mars trine to Pluto in Capricorn, and we have the Sun trine to Uranus retrograde, as well as the new moon itself happens on Monday in the sign of Virgo. And I think the last thing I forgot to mention was that the moon is of course going to make a trine to the planet Uranus at that time. So if we kind of strip away these outer planets, right? Let's assume that we can't really see or know about the outer planets. Was the case for much of history. We would only be able to know about, what's Mars doing with this new moon. Mars, we'll start there. So if that's the most insignificant planet relative to the new moon, because of its proximity in the same sign, we know that this new moon will be a new beginning of activities on some level, but also a new level of, or a new type of military activity or martial type activity that will come out. If you are interested, I'm going to be offering mundane transiting astrology forecasts on my Patreon, and what that will entail is I will look at the transiting astrology of a particular couple week period, and I'll tell you which houses is it going through in the area of North America that you live in. I've been thinking about it, and I think I'll do North America and Europe as well. I don't think I can really handle more than that. But if you'd like to see that and you really want to know what will happen in the ordinary course of circumstances in the world, check that out for sure. The example I would give you is that we have this Hurricane Ida, and although I wish I could have said better about predicting it, we did see that the planet Mars was going through the 8th house of the mundane astrology chart of the eastern side of the United States. So, because Mars, the planet of destruction, really what Mars does best is destroy, and what Mars did in the sign of Virgo was use those mercurial tools to bring that about. So if you would like to see these sort of delineations, they will be available through Patreon starting this month. So there is a new beginning with martial activities coming about that will carry on through the month. When the moon is full in Pisces, we will have that Mars-Moon opposition. The Mars will be in the later degrees of Virgo, and that will be more of a an intense confrontational experience for most contexts at that time, including personally, because it's relative to something that's being seeded during this next couple day period as the moon makes the new moon and so closely connects to Mars. Now, I don't think it's entirely a bad new moon. I don't think, I mean, relatively speaking, who can say what's good or bad in terms of astrology? But I do think that because we have this Venus trine to Jupiter so close to the new moon, even though the moon itself isn't very close to either of those planets, you know, we are gaining a, when the light gains throughout the next couple weeks, you will see, I believe, these Venus and Libra themes of proper communication, proper decorum, cleaning up our what Jupiter's been kind of working with in Aquarius. He doesn't have all the tools that he'd like to have. Jupiter, I think, is it's kind of a blasé thing to say, but like more mysterious planet than we maybe give it credit for. The planet, you know, his domicile is in Sagittarius or in Pisces, and we saw briefly throughout the summer Jupiter's ingress into his home sign of Pisces. So we get to kind of see what Jupiter likes to do with his own tools, right? But as Saturn is now the sign ruling Jupiter, Jupiter has to work with what Saturn has in Aquarius, which is a fixed air sign. It's intellectual. It's using, you know, this restricted, but on another level, very like freeing or radically different way of communicating and dealing with crises than we've ever had, right? If we think about the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction that happened in Aquarius, that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at 0 degrees of Aquarius, which is very interesting, and the first Jupiter-Saturn conjunction of the new cycle in air signs, we have the planet representing prosperity, gain, business activity, Jupiter, righteousness, upstanding, good nature, and Saturn, the planet of restriction, the planet of limitations, of lack, of structure, of the way things work on a fundamental level structurally, or at least that perspective. These two planets conjoined in the 0 degree of Aquarius for the first time in about 200 years. Well, this is the first time that this cycle of air signs is coming about, the 200-year cycle, right? I don't think I'm messing that up. But because we had that, we are able to use these Jupiterian things, these abilities to connect, integrate as a society to deal with the larger structural difficulties. The way that Saturn, throughout the past, his time in Aquarius, but I want to say specifically his time being retrograde in Aquarius now, has become increasingly hard to work with, more intractable, more fixed in a certain perspective. So although Saturn is not moving forward yet, because the Sun is almost to the sign of Libra, we will within the next couple months see Jupiter and Saturn move forward, right? So I think this Venus, all this just to say that because Venus is making that trine to Jupiter during this new moon, I can expect that we will see significant progress. Maybe not exactly with the way that we want, the way that we're not going to necessarily be moving ahead with those. I want to say economic activities as an example with Jupiter in Aquarius direct. I think that'll be a much more significant thing once that happens. But you know, there is like a sense of lasting beneficence that kind of carries us from the new moon onward because of that. Okay, let's think about it in a different way now. So the Mars is trine to Pluto, and Pluto is a secretive, committed, serious force that is kind of obscure and not really identifiable unless you really are seeing it or you're tactilely aware of it, right? It's like, you know, it's like an example of, like, I was watching an old Tony Robbins tape, right? And he is Pluto and Virgo, right? And there's a lot I could talk about in this chart, but with him, you can see that level of like committed power sort of coming out in his person, right? And he has the Libra ascendant ruled by the Mars Venus conjunction in Aquarius, ruled by the Saturn in the 4th house on the angle. So his chart is very powerful, besides being a chart with Pluto in it. But even though this is sort of a digression, I did see, and I have seen, in the personal development world, this grounded commitment or otherwise intention to be oneself that's very effective in, and I think that very much relates to what Pluto represents. So if the planet of drive is connected to such a planet as Pluto, we can expect on a collective level, people to be very committed, very driven. I think the past couple weeks, past month hasn't really gone as well maybe as, maybe things were flowing during the spring and the summer, right? More in the summer. So I think there's a new level of commitment we're giving to our activities, to what we are being driven to accomplish, with a very large degree of commitment and seriousness that may not even be perceptible. So, and that would be happening for people on a collective level. Okay, and that's all for that, right? And for those two things, we also still need to make more mention of this Sun trine to Uranus, and maybe we wouldn't even talk too much about it if it was only happening there, right? But because it's happening next to these other aspects at the same time, we have to expect that there will be a unexpected way that people are going to be showing up in the world. The way that we want our energy to appear is going to be radically different than it was. I think we are, Uranus and Saturn are not quite in a square now, so we're kind of working with them. I think they're both a little bit intractable in their own ways, or unworkable in their own ways. With Uranus being retrograde now, we can, we're not, it's sort of uncomfortable. I feel like the connections of the moon to Uranus throughout the week will not be, exactly pleasant if you have a nervous, a nervous disposition, or, you're a weak nervous system person, if you're sensitive nervously, I think you've already been feeling it. But as the Sun connects there, I think less of our body, but more of our personal energy, we want to break out and do something different. And I think it's relative to kind of what we've already developed in the way you've been seeing Uranus and Taurus show up in your life. If you've been following that, you can really, not exactly backtracking, but maybe putting your energy in places that you've already put it, but kind of looking at it in a different way. And I think the way that will show up for you may not be even of your choice, but probably something that comes about unexpectedly and from a quarter that you didn't really anticipate. So that's all for our new moon reading for this week. I hope that was interesting for you. I pray that you will be blessed in Jesus' name. And I thank you for listening. If you would like to get more astrology content, please subscribe to my Patreon below. And you may also see what other offerings I have available on my website. So, God bless you, and have a great 2 weeks.